Today we're going to talk about how to know if your ex is breadcrumbing you, but I'd like to look specifically at real-life tactics that exes have used to breadcrumb. First things first though, what is breadcrumbing? Well, breadcrumbing often refers to when an ex does just enough to make you think they're interested in re-pursuing a relationship with you, to keep you on the hook, so to speak. However, usually that ex hasn't really made a decision on whether or not they want to pursue you romantically just yet. They are just keeping their options open. It's never fun to be on the receiving end of behavior like this, but in this video, I'm going to show you some of the most common signs that breadcrumbing exes engage in, and after that, I'm going to peel back the layers psychologically and help you understand why exes breadcrumb. So I want this to be sort of the most comprehensive video on breadcrumbing within the breakup space. And I thought really in order to do that, it would be good to ask real people going through real breakups what kind of breadcrumbing behaviors their exes were actually exhibiting. So as always, our private Facebook support group is perfect for this. So I went ahead and literally just asked them. So I literally wrote a post saying, hey, I'm writing an article and filming a video on breadcrumbing. I want to base it on real life experiences. So I thought coming to you guys and asking you would be perfect. What are some of the breadcrumbing tactics that your ex has used on you in the breakup? And there were really 5 tactics or signs that caught my eye. I'm going to provide proof of those signs by showing you the actual comments that caught my interest and provide a little bit of commentary when it comes to them. All right, so let's begin with sign number 1, asking for a favor or doing you a favor. This is actually probably the only addition to the list that sort of shocked me. But in hindsight, it makes complete sense. It's just often overlooked. So I got the addition from this specific comment right here. And really this part of the comment interested me. Asking me if I had some clothes for a funeral. Of course I did, and then proceeded to talk about his family drama the entire conversation, said he procrastinated, don't worry about the clothes, he'll buy some. So what we have here is an ex who's clearly going through some stuff emotionally. There's a funeral involved. Don't know the context yet, but there's a funeral involved, and usually the person who he would vent to is no longer in the picture. They're broken up. So he makes up an excuse to talk to that person so he can vent. The excuse was the favor of borrowing clothes. Yet, what I find interesting is our member doesn't necessarily take it that way. They don't take it as, because of the emotional nature of the conversation, it's probably taken more as if he's opening up to her in the same way that he would as if he was in a relationship with her. But to him, he's looking at it a different way. And so we have this breadcrumbing happening ultimately because I feel like there's a lack of communication on his part with her. And so the comment also goes on to explain some of the other behaviors that this particular ex engaged in. And that's actually going to be sign number 2. Which is they set up a date to see you and then stand you up at the last minute. Now, I could use the previous comment, the favor comment, to highlight this, but believe it or not, I want to use a different comment because there are lots of variations, but this comment specifically said it in detail. And that comment is, he kept setting up excuses for months to see me, but he didn't follow through. Now, I blurred out the rest of the comment for the commenter's privacy since personal information was shared, and I'm certain they wouldn't want that out there for the public to see, but it doesn't really revolve around the point I'm trying to make here. This sign, in and of itself, might be the most common example of a breadcrumbing I saw amongst all the people who responded to the post. So essentially, they act like they really want to see you in person, and then at the last moment, they never follow through with those plans. I think when we look back at the breakup avenue for this loss of independence, an ex potentially feels this avenue heightened because they've already felt the loss of independence at one point when they dated you, especially if they're avoidant. So what it does is it often causes them to relive the trauma even if they weren't the one to open up or trigger the offer of meeting up. So even the threat of meeting up, the threat of potentially getting back together brings them back to the breakup trauma and causes them to go away. Sign number 3, repeating your wants directly to you, but never following through on it. Now, my favorite comment out of all the ones that posted was this one. He knew the right words that always got marriage, love, commitment. He dropped them and knew I'd come back to him. This one stuck out to me because it's essentially an ex using the concept of tactical empathy for their own evil purposes. Now, if you aren't familiar with tactical empathy, it's essentially where you repeat a person's worldview back to them, their hopes, dreams, desires. And as long as you show you are empathetic towards those things, you literally repeat it back to them. They'll look at you like you're a mind reader, and that person is a lot more likely to be pliable to your own wants. You can kind of get them to agree to do things that would have been a little bit more difficult for them to agree to originally. When I get into the psychology section of this video, I'm going to talk about puppet relationships, and I feel that's what's happening here. The avoidant ex breadcrumbs because they want that love adrenaline spike from you, and they know exactly what buttons to push to get it. They say the right words, they get the reaction or even physical benefit of sleeping together with you that they wanted. They got what they want, they're out until, of course, nostalgia hits again, and then the cycle repeats over and over and over again. That's a little bit of a puppet relationship. More on that in a second. Sign number 4. A lot of talking to you while they have another person that they are dating. This one wasn't so much a specific sign from one comment as opposed to just an observation from one of the commenters. And they kind of have a point. So the comment basically says, I see a lot of being there method people reacting. Does this occur mostly with ERP members doing the being there method or just a coincidence? Someone else says, well, yeah, it seems kind of that way. And for reference, the being there method is a strategy that we teach to people who have exes who have moved on to someone else. Now, what's interesting from the data that I got on the post is that there was a lot of mentions of the other person, meaning a lot of the breadcrumbing is occurring while the ex is with someone new. Remember, these are real life people giving real life stories that are happening right now. And there's a good 5 or 6 commenters or comments out of the 20 that I looked through that mentioned the other woman. This kind of behavior actually sort of tracks with what we know about the avoidant attachment style, specifically the phantom ex syndrome, which I've talked a lot about in videos in the past. Sign number 5 is they engage in pogo sticking behavior. This is my own little late addition because I know it does happen even though no one immediately said they were experiencing it on the post. But usually when I refer to pogo sticking behavior, I'm referring to it in reference to an ex blocking you and then unblocking you on social media. So they block you because they don't want anything to do with you, but then curiosity gets the better of them. They unblock you really quickly to check and see what you're up to. Okay, cool. They found what you're up to. Then they block you again. And they go back and forth, pogo sticking across the spectrum. What you're really looking for here is a lot of hot and cold behaviors. Your ex has an emotional conversation with you one day, and then the next they aren't anywhere to be found. And again, it's sort of like ideal mixed signal that you're going to get. It's certainly a type of consistent breadcrumb. Real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. But why? Why do exes breadcrumb? Perhaps the best place to start when psychoanalyzing exes like this is with attachment theory. So really 2022 has been the year of avoidance. I've been hyper focusing on avoidance because I think really understanding the nuances of their specific attachment style can teach you about breadcrumbing because you'll find it's very on brand for the avoidant. First things first though, did you know that most of the people reading my website will probably have an avoidant ex? Now, according to WebMD, the avoidant attachment style is an attachment style a child develops when their parent or main caretaker doesn't show care or responsiveness past providing essentials like food and shelter. The child disregards their own struggles and needs in order to maintain peace and keep their caregiver close by. They still struggle and feel anxiety or sadness, but do so alone and deny the importance of those feelings. This attachment style often stays with the person through adulthood, potentially impacting their romantic relationships, friendships, and other connections. So specifically when it comes to breakups, some interesting things happen with the avoidant attachment style. Today, I'd like to talk about two of those specific things because it really helps explain breadcrumbing behavior. And those two things are the core wound of independence and the nostalgia weakness. So let's dive into those for a moment. What is the core wound of independence? I can't really claim credit for this concept because one of the ex recovery coaches, Tyler, first brought it to my attention in an interview that we were doing, really looking at fearful avoidance and why they pull away and what to do once they pull away. Now, it's believed that every core insecure attachment style has a core wound, a singular fact that can explain away most of their insecure behaviors. So, for example, the anxious attachment style will have a fear of being alone. That's their core wound. The avoidant attachment style, on the other hand, has a fear of losing independence. The fearful attachment style has basically both wounds present. They're the most difficult to deal with. But we're not dealing with that right just this second. We are interested in the avoidant core wound of losing independence. And here's the interesting thing. The avoidant values independence at such a high level that they literally prefer puppet relationships. What is a puppet relationship? Well, puppet relationships are ones where they can sort of have control of the relationship and have you on their strings, much like a puppeteer. Here's an example of how this works. An avoidant likes the initial feeling of being in a relationship, but not the strings attached to a commitment. So what they often will do is set up the scenario where they semi-commit, but never actually follow through with a commitment. Starting to sound familiar? Well, it gets even better. They even know what to say and what to do to keep their puppet relationship going so you don't leave. In the end, you're the puppet on their strings. The end goal is always the same. They want to keep the relationship flowing for as long as possible without actually having to commit. One of their tactics for achieving this effect is breadcrumbing. Of course, there's another interesting thing we've learned about avoidance. They almost always fall victim to the nostalgia weakness. Now, I'm making a big deal about this because I think a lot of breadcrumbing occurs because an ex falls victim to a period of nostalgia and then is authentic with their intentions at first. So here's my hypothesis. A lot of the breadcrumbing behaviors start out authentically. And so what we're finding with avoidance is a lot of times they're using breadcrumb as a way to open the conversation up, get what they want, and then ultimately leave. So what happens when an ex goes from cold to hot is you start thinking, wow, they're breadcrumbing. They're interested in me. This is like, could this be happening? Are they wanting me back? But it's a flash in the pan, lightning in a bottle. Eventually, their core wound causes them to freak out. Reliving the past, even momentarily, is enough to engage that core wound, that loss of independence, and they freak out and disappear. Why exes breadcrumb, in my opinion? They're falling victim to nostalgia. They have these nostalgic moments, and I think even that favor story where, he was asking for a favor about the jacket. This is a great example of an ex falling victim to nostalgia because he's falling victim to the conversations, the way he used to be so open in the relationship with our client. But the reason they're falling apart and moving away is because the feeling of nostalgia only takes them so far. And when they're kind of left into the middle of the ocean and have to swim for themselves and realize, oh my gosh, the commitment ship is coming, they freak out and they swim the other way. And then they breadcrumb, and then they breadcrumb, and then they breadcrumb, hoping potentially for a puppet relationship where they can say the things that they need to say to get what they want, but not have the commitment.